And so, welcome. We're going to be talking about how to boost your immunity through healthy eating. So, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. So, hopefully, you'll be able to see it in a second. There we go. All right. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen now, and some slides are going to pop up in just a moment. So we're going to talk a little bit about some particular food nutrients and food groups that are going to help with immunity. And this is not just for dealing with the coronavirus, but also just throughout the year at any point in time to keep your immune system strong, to help fight off anything from the daily colds to the flu to the coronavirus and other issues that may be going on. So what we'll be reviewing is some of the immune boosting nutrients. Then we'll do a little discussion on supplements because there's a lot of immunity supplements available on the market right now. And then we'll talk about some additional lifestyle modifications that are outside of nutrition that do help with boosting your immunity.
So let's start by talking a little bit about some specific nutrients. So let's start with beta carotene, also known as vitamin A. So, vitamin A, you might have heard in the past, is something that helps with our eye health, but it also is very important in our immunity. It helps to keep our immune system strong. So, eating adequate vitamin A through your diet is going to be very important. Now, the recommended dietary allowance, what this means is this is really the minimum that you should be aiming to get through foods. So for men, it's going to be about 900 micrograms, whereas women it's going to be about 700 micrograms. So what the heck does that mean? Well, the good news is vitamin A is actually one of the changes that has come with the new label. So starting in January of 2020, so just a few months ago, the new label was rolled out. And the new label, it has several changes that are really positive, like added sugars is my favorite. But they also added vitamin A to the label. So you'll know how much vitamin A is in the foods that you're consuming that actually have a label. But in this chart here, you can see that a sweet potato, if you eat a medium-sized sweet potato with the skin, you're getting, for women, double the amount that you need for vitamin A just from that sweet potato. That's how nutritious it is. And then you'll see some other foods like spinach, carrots. We've always known carrots are very good for vitamin A, but not the highest, as they can often be marketed as. But a great source nonetheless. And that's just for half a cup of carrots, you get 460 micrograms. So it's not a lot of these foods that you need to be consuming in order to get adequate vitamin A. It's just making sure that you are eating a lot of these foods instead of all of the processed packaged foods, which don't have all of these nutrients in them. So the first important part of immunity is going to be vitamin A. So that's nutrient one. Nutrient number two is going to be vitamin C, and this is the one that you're probably most familiar with. So vitamin C, this is very, very important for your immune system to function properly. But vitamin C has many other functions in the body. It helps with the absorption of iron in the body, which iron, as we know, is very important. And it's also a very strong antioxidant. An antioxidant is something that helps fight off free radicals. Free radicals can cause damage and inflammation throughout the whole body. And these are created from a variety of things. It could be pollution, it could be chemicals that we're consuming or breathing in, chemicals from water bottles, pesticides, it could be carcinogens like smoking and things like that. All of those types of things will create free radicals in the body, which then can cause cancer. They can cause premature aging. So vitamin C plays an important role in those as well. But for immunity, of course, we need to make sure we're getting the vitamin C. Now, the RDA for vitamin C is going to be 90 milligrams for men and 75 for women. What are good sources of vitamin C? We obviously know citrus fruits are very good for our vitamin C intake, but also red peppers is at the top of the chart there. You'll see just half a cup of red peppers is going to give you about 95 milligrams of vitamin C. So it's not just in your fruits, it's in quite a few vegetables as well. And then, of course, you have oranges, the second there with 70 milligrams from one whole orange. Kiwis are very high as well, 65 milligrams. And then you'll see the list go on from there. Again, it's a lot of our citrus fruits, but also a lot of things that you don't think of, like cabbage and potatoes and peppers. These all have vitamin C too. So if you don't like oranges, you're not losing out on vitamin C. So the next nutrient that we'll talk about is vitamin D. Vitamin D is probably not one that you thought of that can help with your immune function, but it does play a very important role. So obviously it helps in absorbing calcium and keeping our bones strong, but immunity is an important role in vitamin D, and it also has many other roles in the body too. So what do we need for vitamin D? This is a tricky one, and how we get the adequate vitamin D. So if your age is 19 to 69, the recommended minimum for vitamin D is going to be 600 IUs or 15 micrograms. And you'll see IUs or micrograms listed interchangeably on food labels and also on supplements. Um, Again, vitamin D is one of those things that was added to the new label, fortunately, so you'll be able to see that on your food packages now as well. If you're older than 70, you want to aim to get a little bit more vitamin D, which is going to be about 800 IUs or 20 micrograms. The big issue with vitamin D and why doctors are so concerned about it is that there are very few foods that have vitamin D. So you'll see this chart is much smaller than some of the other nutrients that we go over. There really is just a few sources. Cod liver oil, if you have 1 tablespoon of that, you're going to get a lot of vitamin D. That's almost 1,400 IUs, but who wants to take a spoonful of cod liver oil every day? Probably not most of us, but you can find it in the stores. They have it at the seafood counter at Market Basket. I see it all the time. Rainbow trout, if you have that, which I know we're all having on a regular basis, if you get 3 ounces of that, you're getting about 645 IUs. So if you're younger, that's going to be your daily dose of vitamin D. Salmon also has a decent amount of vitamin D. Salmon is kind of a power food. It has so many good nutrients in it, including vitamin D. So 3 ounces is going to give you about 570 IUs. And then white mushrooms, as long as they're exposed to sun when they're growing, which you don't always know, so that's hard to pinpoint, but just half a cup of that can give you about 360 IUs. And this is pretty much it as far as food sources of vitamin D naturally. A lot of foods will have vitamin D added into them. So think of like milk, a lot of your dairy products are going to be supplemented with vitamin D. But otherwise, really, you're going to get it from the sun or from supplements, and that's pretty much it. Now, for sun exposure, there's really no set amount that researchers have figured out to this point. And I think the reason for that is because it can vary so much on the level of UV rays, whether we're in the Northeast or whether you're down in the Caribbean. That's going to be very different. But right now, generally, what they recommend in order to get enough vitamin D is if you get about 5 to 30 minutes of sun exposure twice a week, and that would be with your arms, legs, and face exposed. Okay, so not like in the winter time when we're out skiing and we're fully covered, but when we do have some of our skin exposed. So twice a week between 10 and 3 p.m. because that's when you're going to get the best UV rays, and that's without sunscreen. So if you do that, then you're getting enough vitamin D. But this time of year, we might not be getting that. We might be getting it now that a lot of us are not working, but it's a little bit difficult. So vitamin D is one of those that supplements can be necessary in this case because it's just not in a lot of our foods to help with our immunity. So that's a little bit about vitamin D. All right, let's go and move on to zinc. Zinc you might also be familiar with as far as fighting off the general colds or the flu. It's a very popular supplement. It's actually added into a lot of cold products or cold supplements. Maybe you noticed it, maybe you didn't. And it is very important for immunity, almost as important as the vitamin C is. So what do we need daily for zinc? For men, you should be aiming to get about 11 milligrams, and for females, it's going to be 8 milligrams, which doesn't sound like a lot, but then you take a look at the amounts that are in some of our foods. For some reason, oysters are extremely high in zinc. So if you're going to have about 3 ounces of cooked oysters, that would be about 75 milligrams. Now, even if you don't have them cooked, you're still getting that zinc, actually probably a little bit more. It's just to dictate 3 ounces of actual cooked, because they do shrink a little bit when you cook them. So you're getting 75 milligrams with that, which is not a lot. That's way above your needs. So oysters are always good, but we don't eat those on a regular basis. Um, then when we go down the list, if you take a look at the food sources, you'll notice that it is mostly your protein-based foods that have zinc in them, and more of your animal-based ones. It's actually absorbed a little bit better from animal-based sources like beef and chicken and eggs than it is from something like cashews or chickpeas towards the bottom of that list. So yes, there's some zinc in it in those foods, but not as much and not as well absorbed as something like beef. Which has 7 milligrams per 3 ounces. So for those of you who are vegetarians or vegans, zinc is a very important nutrient that you might be deficient in, which can decrease your immunity. So you just want to make sure that you're either getting a supplement in that case, or that you're eating something like pumpkin seeds, that's pretty high, yogurt if you're vegetarian, cashews, chickpeas, because those are some of the higher sources of zinc. Okay, so next let's discuss a little bit about probiotics. Now, probiotics I could do an entire hour on, but I will keep it short for probiotics. You might not think of this as something that helps with your immunity, but it's actually extremely important. I think over the next several years, we're going to find that probiotics and the whole gut microbiome and what's going on in your digestive system, as far as the health of the bacteria in there, has a huge impact on our health. There's a lot of research going on. So there's not a lot of answers yet on how much your gut bacteria affects our health, but down the road, a few years from now, we're going to see a lot more. Now, think about it. Your digestive system, other than your skin, is one of your first layers of immunity. When you consume a food, if as opposed to something being exposed to your skin, your digestive system is the first system it goes through and fights off any bacteria, any bad bacteria. So keeping your gut healthy by making sure you have probiotics is really, really important for immunity. So if you have really bad gut bacteria and you might not know that, you could be someone who gets sick all the time. So probiotics are actual live bacteria that are present in the foods that we eat. Not all foods, it's mostly in fermented foods. And these help keep our gut healthy. At this point, there's no recommendation as to how much you should be having of probiotics, like you should have 1 serving or 2 servings a day of probiotic sources. Really, it's just the more that you can have, the better your results are going to be. So for food sources, it's all of your fermented foods like yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut, some of the more fermented cheeses, kombucha, which is a tea, miso, some pickled foods in sourdough bread, not your typical commercial pickled foods in sourdough bread, just because of the way that they're processed. But if you're pickling yourself at home or making your own sourdough bread, then you might have some of the probiotics present in them. But if you just go to Market Basket and pick up your dill pickles or, Pepperidge Farm sourdough bread, you're not getting probiotics from that. It's going to be more the homemade types. And then if you have raw unfiltered apple cider vinegar, that also has some probiotics in it as well. So a lot of these foods are not foods other than yogurt that we may enjoy on a regular basis. So again, probiotics may or may not play a benefit in these with this and specifically with immunity. Okay, and then protein. Protein is probably not another one of those things you don't think of in keeping your immune system strong, but it is really important. If you're not getting adequate protein, it could be a huge issue because it does play a big role in just regenerating cells and keeping our immune system strong. Fortunately, protein is present in many of our foods, and most Americans are not deficient in protein. Unless you're somewhat of a more food insecure population or an older population. The older population absorbs protein less, and they also eat less protein. So your protein needs do go up as you get older. So keep that in mind. These recommendations that are listed here on this slide are for the average younger person. If you're up above 65 or older, your protein needs are actually going to be a little bit higher than what's listed here. Not significantly higher, not double by any means. Just a few grams higher. Um, and many of our foods contain protein. Protein is listed on our food labels, so it's pretty easy to figure out if you're getting enough protein or not. A general rule of thumb is just to make sure that you're eating protein at every meal and snack that you have, and you'll get plenty of protein throughout the day, okay, instead of just munching on those processed packaged foods. So those are the nutrients that are really important to keep our immune system strong. In short, I could do a lot more detail on those, but I'll keep it simple for today. But what about supplements? As dietitians, we always talk about getting these nutrients from foods when if you go to Walgreens or CVS or GNC, you're going to find hundreds of supplements that are supposedly helpful in building your immune system. Um, Now, for the most part, if you stick to the nutrients that we just discussed, vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin D, etc., for supplements, those are going to be very safe. At some point, yes, you can have too much, and that can be a toxicity issue. But if you're just taking the recommended dose on the bottle, you're not going to have any toxicity issues. Now, some of the other things, like in this picture that you can see, that are supposed to help with, your whole immunity system, the research that's out there right now with a lot of these immune boosting supplements is that they don't really help. So it's not something I recommend you go out to the store and spend your money on right now, because the research has not said that these help prevent colds or the coronavirus or the flu. So save your money for elsewhere. It's always better to get nutrients from foods, because foods have a lot of other nutrients in addition to the vitamin C and the A and the D that are going to be beneficial to you. They have antioxidants, fiber, all kinds of different stuff that really help our body function on a regular basis, where these supplements are just that vitamin C or just that vitamin D, not all of the other benefits of the food. So whenever possible, please get it from food. But as we discussed with some of the nutrients like zinc, if you're vegan or vegetarian, you might be deficient in that, because you can't get it from the foods that you're eating. It's just not present. Vitamin D, if you're not going out in the sun, then yes, you do need that supplement. But some of the other things, you should be fine just eating food. Okay, so don't fall for a lot of those immune boosting supplements. Now, what are some additional tips to help keep your immune system strong? First is just balance your eating, okay? It's not just about that one supplement or that one food or, just one habit. It's about balancing everything throughout the day. You want to aim to get about 5 to 6 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. And the next couple slides, I have what a serving actually means. And that's going to assure that you get plenty of vitamin A and C and some of the other nutrients that are important for your immune system. Eating lots of healthy fats, whole grains, and lean protein. So really just a balanced, healthy eating plan is going to be best for your immune system. Stress management is super important. If you missed my talk last week about stress management, I highly recommend you pull it up on the Cedardale website so you can see that. But if you're a particularly stressful or anxious person, you are really limiting your immune system. So doing some stress management strategies daily can help improve your immunity. Proper hygiene, which we've heard so much about, so I'm not going to go into this, but that just means, hand washing, etc., hand sanitizer. And then adequate sleep, that's one that's really, really important for your immune system. Kind of goes along with stress management, but if you're not sleeping enough, for whatever reason, that can really lower your immune function. So make sure that as best you can, try to get that 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night of good quality sleep. All right, so on the next 2 slides, like I said, I have listed what a serving counts as, in case you weren't familiar with that. Typically, it's going to be for fruits like the size of your fist, or a little smaller, a little bigger, depending on the size of your hand. A cup of leafy green vegetables, or half a cup of something that's a little bit more condensed. And then there's some more broken down on this slide as well for you guys to read through. So like for grapefruit, because those are bigger, it's typically going to be half of the grapefruit, 16 grapes, 1 kiwi, etc. Okay. All right. So I will now start answering some questions if you guys have any. You can feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question, or you can go ahead and put it in the chat box. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see if there's a question in the chat box. All right, so vitamin A, veggies, why raw is steamed okay? Yes, yes. So when I put up those charts that said raw or cooked on the veggies and fruits, it doesn't mean that you have to have them raw or cooked. It's just so you guys know that it's half a cup of actual raw vegetables, because when you cook them down, it's going to be a different measurement. So if it says raw or it says cooked, it's just to tell you measurement wise, not quality of nutrition. With salmon, is canned or bagged like tuna okay? It's okay as long as sodium is not a concern for you. If sodium is a concern because you have high blood pressure or heart issues, then I would not recommend canned or bagged tuna or salmon because they're so high in sodium. But if you're healthy, regularly active, you're sweating out a lot of sodium, then absolutely you can have the canned or bagged salmon. All right, so other questions. Do you think drinking alkaline water for immunity boosting? There is no research that says drinking alkaline water helps boost your immunity up to this point. So I would caution with that. It's not really going to cause much harm that we know to this point, but I don't think it's going to help your immune system. Not at least that's been shown in research. And then intermittent fasting. Does it help with immunity? There's, again, very little research on intermittent fasting and the benefits of it. I don't know if it helps with immunity. It really comes down to probably the quality of the foods that you're eating along with that intermittent fasting diet. If you're eating more fruits and vegetables, then yes. But if you're just cutting down the period that you're eating and you're just eating junk food in that period, then it's not going to help with immunity. Okay. Do I recommend an EPA supplements? In some cases, yes. But most research that has been done up to this point, it does not show that an EPA supplement, which is an omega-3 type of a supplement, healthy fat type supplement, has any benefit, not like eating real fish does or eating the real healthy fats does. Okay, any other questions? No? All right. Well, I thank you guys for joining me today. I'll be doing another nutrition talk next week. The topic is to be determined, but if you have any suggestions, please put them in the chat box. Otherwise, you guys have a great Friday. Thank you for joining me. Stay healthy out there, and let me know if you have any other questions. Feel free to email me.